you know is that the numbers of this meeting are so grand that I only have a few spare ones. So A, don't lose it, and B, please don't ask for a second or third backup one. But we'll start in just a minute or two. Thanks very much, colleagues.
女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家好。
Colleagues, can I ask you to please take your seats? All of the distinguished speakers for the event are here, so please take your seats, dear colleagues. Good. Please take your seats, colleagues. Please take your seats. Great. Okay, colleagues, friends, let me introduce myself. Most of you know me. My name is David Ainsworth. I'm the Information Officer for the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I'm the head of the Information Unit. I want to welcome you all to the celebration of the International Day for Biodiversity 2024. Let's have a round of applause. It's very suitable that our celebrations today are taking place, first of all, at the United Nations office in Nairobi, and we'll hear about that importance over the course of today. And it's also important it's taking place during this fourth meeting of the subsidiary body on implementation, where you have all been working very hard and will continue to work. I want to remind everyone that the place we are is where the Convention on Biological Diversity was born, and this day marks the agreement of the text of biodiversity 32 years ago. Today, on this International Day for Biodiversity, we celebrate not just biodiversity, but we also celebrate the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, also referred to as the Biodiversity Plan. Thank you, Inger. Thanks. The theme for this year, Be Part of the Plan, reminds us all of our crucial and special roles in achieving the goals and targets of the plan and helping us realize this future of life in harmony with nature. Joining us all in the celebration today is an exceptional lineup of speakers from the government of Kenya, from China, representing the COP15 presidency, Canada, who hosted us in snowy Montreal, Colombia, who will welcome us in warm Cali later this year. We also have representatives of Indigenous people and local communities, women, and youth. And we're also very delighted to have with us Executive Director of UNEP, Inger Anderson, who was able to have her schedule changed to be here with us, and David Cooper, the Acting Executive Secretary of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And another fellow who you've seen a lot of, recently you'll see more of, which is the chair of this fourth meeting of the subsidiary body on implementation. Each and every one of them will speak about how they and you and all of us can be part of the plan, the Biodiversity Plan. And at the end, we will all share lunch together out in the garden, but we have to wait till the event's over. So without further ado, let me hand the floor over to the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Program, Inger Anderson. Ms. Anderson, we're delighted to give you the floor and our complete attention.
So good afternoon. So you have to learn that in Kenya you respond and you say good afternoon. So we try it again. Good afternoon. Look at that. That changes everything. So look, we all know why we're here. We all know what we're celebrating. You're working so hard for it. But it bears reminding, right? This amazing planet of which we are part, teeming with life and plenty. This amazing planet, this only planet, as far as we know, that has that diversity, its beauty, the awe of what the planet presents. This amazing planet on which we live, on which we exist, on which we grow, and yes, on which we die. This amazing planet that is part of a broader system of ecological existence. This amazing planet where we, human beings, need to understand that we are but one of many species that exist. And you who represent the convention, you who are working for this planet, you who understand the science, you who get the technical identity that we need to ensure, you who understand that financing and capacity building are present and have to be there, you are helping protect this amazing planet. And so when we speak about the triple planetary crisis hitting our amazing planet, when we understand that the Rio Conventions are indivisible, when we speak about all the biodiversity related conventions have meaning for the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, it is because we understand that biodiversity is not just a word, it's life. And this plan that you have designed, that member states have designed, is the plan for life. And therefore, implementing that plan is everything. And we are working very, very hard, and you are working extremely hard on just that, because the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is the plan. It is our map, it is our guide, and it is what we have to deliver. And so we at UNEP, we love when you come here, because you bring the realities of what biodiversity is right into the core of this 52-year-old UN organization that is young at heart and is determined to make a difference for this, our only planet, our amazing planet, and our absolutely awesome planet. And each of the 23 targets matter. Each of the targets matter because they have been defined and refined just so that we understand that these are all gears on a lever, and when we make them all work, we will protect the planet. We will repurpose and deal with harmful subsidies. We will address toxicity in our soils and our environment. We will deal with invasive species. We shall ensure that nutrients are controlled. And we will obviously deal with 30 by 30, both in restoration and of course in protection. And we will do so with the voices and the strength of indigenous people. We will do so to ensure that gender is included. We will do so to make sure that local communities have their say, and we will absolutely do so in places of so that there's justice for Afro-descendants as well. That's what this convention is all about. And I stand before you today so proud of what this convention has journeyed, what you stand for, and where we are going. Happy Biodiversity Day.
Thank you very, very much, Executive Director. Thank you for outlining the indivisibility of biodiversity, its relationship to all the other issues, and to highlight some of the breadth of the activities that we have before us, that all of us in the room will be contributing to. So as we've said, we're here in Nairobi, we're here in Kenya, and it's time for us now to hear from the country that is the host to Yunnan, that is the host to that moment when we gave birth to the Convention on Biological Diversity. And we're very fortunate to have with us today, representing the government of Kenya, John Elungata. John is an elder of the Order of the Burning Spear and is the Secretary of Administration of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and Forestry. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Like you've been told, my name is John Elungata. I want to deliver the speech from the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry on this day. So Mr. David Cooper, Acting Executive Secretary of the Convention on Biological Diversity, Dr. Liu Ning, representative of China at the COP15 presidency, Mr. Kelly Tok, Head of Delegation of Canada, co-host of the COP15, His Excellency Pedro Leon Cortes Ruiz, Ambassador of the Republic of Colombia, COP16 Presidency Designate, Ms. Amelia Areguin, representing the CBD Women Caucus, Ms. Georgie Carino, representing the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity, Mr. Heitor Delasta, Global Youth Biodiversity Network, and all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, on this International Day of Biodiversity, Kenya joins the rest of the world in commemorating the day by reiterating our commitment to the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. For Kenya, The framework offers clear and ambitious targets that will guide the efforts to conserve biodiversity and promote sustainable use. The theme of the day, Be Part of the Plan, calls upon all stakeholders to accelerate the momentum of actions through translating the biodiversity plan into definite national actions, enhance efforts to mobilize adequate means of implementation, and ensure that the manner in which genetic resources are accessed and used maximizes the benefits for users, providers, the ecology, as well as host communities. Kenya is undertaking a robust process of integrating its national biodiversity strategy and action plan, what we call NBSAP, with the overarching goals of the KMGBF. We understand the importance of tailoring global targets to fit our specific ecological and socioeconomic contexts. Thus, we are committed to developing and refining our national biodiversity strategies and action plans to align with these customized targets. At the heart of our approach is the recognition of the need for clear national targets, robust stakeholder engagement, informed decision-making rooted in science, resource mobilization, and the integration of biodiversity considerations across all sectors. These elements form the bedrock upon which we build our path towards a sustainable future. Central to our biodiversity strategy is the goal to restore at least 30% of the degraded terrestrial, inland water, and marine ecosystems by 2030. We recognize that this is no small feat, but through targeted restoration projects, prioritizing areas of significant biodiversity loss, we are determined to achieve this milestone. Kenya joins the rest of the world in being part of the plan by strengthening our nature-based economy, which relies significantly on the utilization of natural resources for goods and services, and by renewing our resolve to conservation, sustainable use, and prudent access and benefit sharing of genetic resources. This will be strongly articulated in the revised National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, supported by the 10-year National Landscape and Ecosystem Restoration Strategy, the anchor framework for the 15 billion National Tree Growing Program. Ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate biodiversity, we cannot ignore the recent devastating floods that impacted many parts of our country, Kenya. The unprecedented floods underscore the urgent need to strengthen our ecosystems and enhance their resilience to climate change. Healthy ecosystems play a crucial role in mitigating the impacts of such natural disasters by absorbing excess water and preventing soil erosion. In this regard, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to everyone here for your unwavering support and standing in solidarity with Kenya during the recent floods. On this International Day for Biodiversity, let us renew our collective commitment to protecting and restoring our natural world. Together, we can achieve a sustainable future for the global biodiversity and build resilience against climate impacts like the recent floods. On the sidelines of these meetings, you are welcome to enjoy the ambient nature, best activities within and around Nairobi and across our beautiful country before you depart back to your countries and stations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for the commitment of Kenya to implementing and moving forward on the framework of the Biodiversity Plan, and thank you for your warm welcome to us here in the country. The Biodiversity Plan is a result of strong action and strong push to adopt at COP15. And this was under the impetus of the COP15 presidency, the government of China. I do want to recognize Dr. Liu Ning, who you all probably know from those days in Montreal and beyond, and I really want to thank him for his presence. He has indicated that we have a special message from the COP15 president, His Excellency Huang Rongqiu, and it's my delight to have that played now. We'll see from the room.
女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家好！很高兴与各位新老朋友相聚云端，共同庆祝国际生物多样性日。今年生物多样性日的主题是“生物多样性，你我共参与”，凸显了生物多样性保护行动的全民性，体现了各国政府、社会各界协力同行的重要性。在各方的共同努力下，我们在 COP15 上成功达成了昆明、蒙特利尔全球生物多样性框架，确立了高雄性的保护、恢复和资源调动的目标，为全球生物多样性治理拨画了蓝图，确定了目标，明确了路径，也凝聚了力量，令世界感到振奋。当前全球生物多样性快速丧失的趋势还没有得到根本的遏制。过去30多年间地球上多达100万个物种濒临灭绝，环境污染和气候变化等驱动因子尚未得到根本的遏制。面对这一全球性挑战，人类是一荣俱荣、一损俱损的命运共同体。我们必须同舟共济，全面有效地落实昆明框架。作为生物多样性公约缔约方，中国全面发挥了国家生物多样性保护工作协调机制的统领作用，组织更新了中国生物多样性保护战略与行动计划2023至2030，成为第一个提交战略行动计划的发展中国家。作为 COP15 的主席国，中国不遗余力地发挥领导和协调作用，最大程度地凝聚全球生物多样性保护的合力。在联合国气候变化迪拜大会期间，我们联合7个缔约方以及联合国环境署、公约秘书处等国际机构，共同发起了昆明框架实施倡议。目前已有26个缔约方和利益攸关方的加入，我们诚挚地欢迎各方继续加入并参与到实施倡议的进程中来。目前，中国与联合国环境署就启动昆明生物多样性基金达成一致。今年我们将安排5000万元人民币支持首批项目在 COP15 之前落地。昆明基金将支持发展中国家实现昆明框架的23个行动目标，努力推动生物多样性主流化，为实现全球绿色可持续发展的目标做出贡献。女士们、先生们、朋友们，在多重环境危机的交织下，生物多样性保护如逆水行舟，不进则退。作为 COP15 的主席，我呼吁各缔约方立即行动起来，加快更新各自国家的生物多样性战略与行动计划 NBSUP， 创新全政府、全社会参与的方式，积极调动各方资源，推动生物多样性主流化。发达国家要积极兑现承诺，大幅提升对发展中国家的资金、技术和能力建设的支持，推动全面平衡、有效地执行昆明框架。让我们携手努力，推动全球生物多样性走上恢复之路，努力实现人与自然和谐共生的美好愿景。谢谢大家。
On behalf of all, as many thanks to the COP15 presidency, and thank you, Dr. Liu Ning, as well. That message of urging us all towards action, the opening of the Kunming Biodiversity Fund, the Action Initiative, all these wonderful signs of continued energy of the COP15 presidency toward advancement of this framework. Now, this is the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic we all suffered, we know that COP15 was held in two parts, and Canada stepped forward and provided the facilities and hosted us for COP15 in Montreal. The conference was memorable to many of us, and I think their people refer to this as the Montreal moment at sometimes as well. So for that reason, I'm very delighted to invite Kelly Tork, who's head of the delegation of Canada, to speak to us all. Kelly, you have the floor.
Thank you. Executive Director Anderson, Acting Executive Secretary Cooper, Dr. Liu King, Ambassador Rees, Mr. Ilungata, and my distinguished fellow speakers, Ms. Carino, Mr. Delesta, and Mr. Araquin, very nice to meet you, and Dr. Reddy, and distinguished delegates. It's very much of an honor to be here with you today on this spectacular International Day for Biodiversity in this beautiful place. Canadians love their natural environment, but we often don't stop to think about just how crucial nature and biodiversity are for our economic well-being, our health, our well-being, and our ability to tackle and adapt to climate change. We do recognize, though, Canada does, that urgent and transformative actions are needed to address the current biodiversity crisis, so that future generations can live in a world where people and nature coexist in harmony. Canada is committed to implementing the ambitious Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework adopted at COP15 in snowy Montreal. Every day since COP15, we have been working hard to help the world deliver on biodiversity, and we must not slow down. At home, Canada is investing over $5 billion to conserve nature, to protect 30% of land and oceans by 2030, and to protect species at risk, key actions to advance the framework domestically. This year, to help implement the ambitious framework, the government will also introduce a federal nature accountability bill, which would establish an accountability and transparency framework for the federal government's commitments under the global biodiversity framework, including requirements to develop national biodiversity strategies and report on their implementation. Canada is developing its 2030 National Nature Strategy to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, taking into account extensive feedback through numerous rounds of consultations and engagement from all levels of government, from Indigenous groups and organizations, and from stakeholders. It calls on every sector of society to play a role in building solutions to support biodiversity. Internationally, Canada was pleased to be the first country to pledge funding to the new Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, and we encourage others in a position to do so to also contribute. Last August, Minister Guilbeault also launched the Nature Champions Network, an international ministerial level group that advocates for the rapid implementation of the framework, including to help ensure that all countries deliver updated domestic biodiversity strategies by COP16 this fall in Cali. On this International Day for Biodiversity, let us all celebrate the incredible biodiversity of this planet we all share. And let us also reflect on how we can take further action, both collectively and individually, to conserve and restore it and be part of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Kelly, and thanks to Canada for all the actions that they've been carrying out at the national level. I do also want to mention that the recently established Global Biodiversity Framework Fund under the Global Environment Facility was opened with a substantial contribution of the Government of Canada for its beginning. So thanks very much to Canada for that as well. So we'll be moving now to COP16 in Cali, Colombia. And this will be the next step on our journey towards achieving the goals of the Biodiversity Plan. The meeting will be held in Cali, which is known as La Sucursal del Cielo, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, or the branch of heaven, as Cali is known. The symbol for the meeting is the Inerida flower, as you would have seen, a beautiful symbol of the variety of nature and also its resilience. And the theme of COP16 is also inspiring, peace with nature. So with all of this energy and inspiration, I'm now inviting His Excellency Pedro León Cortés Ruiz, who's the Ambassador of Colombia to Kenya, to speak to us all today. Ambassador.
Good morning. Okay. Where's the Jumbo. Thank you for the kind invitation to participate in this important event for the International Day for Biodiversity. Respective Executive Director, Acting Executive Director, representative of the Kenyan government, and Dr. Li Niang, representative of China, Amelia, John Carino from the Women Caucus and Indigenous, and distinguished delegates. A special recognition goes to the government and the people of Kenya, especially for the legacy of Wangari Maathai, whose life and work continue to be an inspiration and a vision for the struggles in conserving biodiversity. The tree planting we just shared holds deep and special significance for Colombia as the host country of COP16 and the theme Peace with Nature. So let me talk more about Colombia in case you are still not convinced to go to Colombia. Today, Colombia takes great pride on its resilience to heal from the wounds inflicted on nature due to our internal conflict, as well from visions and practices that do not recognize the inseparable links between the fate of nature and our existence as humankind. Our peace-building processes have acknowledged this, making peace with nature a pillar in consolidating a lasting peace among us and with nature. In this regard, it is important to highlight a milestone. The mechanisms of transitional justice have recognized the differentiated impacts of the conflict on indigenous and Afro-descendant people who have been the guardians of biodiversity in the most strategic ecosystems. In Colombia, 53% of the national territory is covered by forest. Colombia is the second most megadiverse country in the world. It is the first country in diversity of birds, orchids, and butterflies, second country in diversity of plants, amphibians, freshwater fish, reptiles, palms, and bats, and fifth country in biodiversity of mammals. The country has a great diversity of ecosystems in which there are still mostly natural areas, with 91 types of natural and transformed ecosystems, of which 70 are natural between continental and marine, and 21 are transformed. Those ecosystems include mountains with perpetual snow, paramos, 50% of the world's paramos are in Colombia, covering an area equivalent to a little less than 3% of the continental territory, and Andean forests. Additionally, it has tropical forests, including the Amazon region and the Chocó biogeographic region, savannas, two coasts, and oceans with coral areas, mangroves, and other marine, coastal, and insular ecosystems of great importance, constituting a vast wealth at all scales of biodiversity. Colombia also possesses significant water resources and some of our rivers have been recognized by Colombian courts as subjects of rights with an ecocentric approach. The first of these was the Atrato River in the Chocó region. COP16 is also the COP of the people. The biodiversity provides invaluable ecosystem services for the population, and many of these areas are inhabited by indigenous and Afro-descendant people with a rich cultural heritage who enjoy special rights, including territorial and participatory rights. Thus, Colombian legislation recognized the intrinsic relationship of ethnic groups with their territories they inhabit, their livelihoods and belief systems, which are indissolubly linked to their existence. This relationship of interdependence is so strong that Colombia courts have referred to biocultural rights, which unify environmental and cultural rights of ethnic groups under the same protection, given the way they co-evolve. Therefore, today, as we celebrate the International Day for Biodiversity, the call is to consider this interaction between the conservation of biological diversity and the cultures that inhabit these rich ecosystems as the survival of both in indissoluble links. So once again, Karibu Cali, Karibu Colombia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Your mention of the importance of Indigenous people and traditional knowledge brings us to our next speaker. The Biodiversity Plan calls on each and every one of us to play their important roles. And the important role of Indigenous peoples and local communities is absolutely central and part of our discussions moving forward. So for that reason, I'm delighted to invite Joji Cariño of the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity to speak to us all today. Joji, the floor is yours.
Greetings to all of us as we celebrate the International Day for Biodiversity. The last time we saw each other, we were in Montreal negotiating the KMGVF, and now we are talking about implementation. So today, actually, the parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity are deciding the futures of nature and peoples across many agenda items of SBI 4. Bound together by the historic Biodiversity Plan, post-2020 to 2050, parties are now negotiating actions for dealing with the deeply rooted causes of biodiversity loss, climate change, fueled by economic, social, and political drivers, and extreme imbalances in wealth, power, and worldviews in our current world systems. And these are the underlying causes of the despoliation of the earth. But also present in today's meeting are Indigenous peoples and local communities whose everyday lives embody fundamental relationships with nature, but also fundamental characteristics of our global crisis. The loss of lands, territories, ecosystems, and wildlife, the exclusion and marginalization in decision-making about our forests, waters, and seas, erosion and loss of our livelihoods and cultures, and our values of caring for the earth crushed by the domination of values of extractivism and wealth accumulation. So we embody both options and possibilities for the future, but we are also under great threat. How will the parties reconcile these hard realities as they update their national biodiversity strategies and action plans? And will indigenous peoples be recognized as central actors and partners in renewing the relationship between nature and peoples? Today, as we celebrate the International Day for Biodiversity by planting trees as a symbolic commitment to nature, we must also plant the seeds of a strong partnership to respect, protect, and fulfill the human rights of indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth. This partnership between governments and society, promised by the UN Summit on Environment in Development at Rio when the CBD was born, and now renewed by the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Plan, shall be the foundation and pathway towards the vision of living in harmony with nature. Rituals are an important part of indigenous peoples' ways of living and being. Through rituals, we affirm our cultural and spiritual relationships with the earth, with our ancestors, and for future generations, walking to the future in the footsteps of our ancestors. As a biodiversity community, we must make our annual celebration of the International Day for Biodiversity our ritual to have concrete milestones in our path to justice and ecological renewal. Not only a ceremonial ritual of ceremonies, but importantly, in the decisions which are being made at SBI 4. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Carino, for also reminding us of the importance of the human rights perspective in all of the work that we do. The Biodiversity Plan is notable also for its inclusion of a target which is to ensure gender equality and a gender-responsive approach for biodiversity action. And further, the adoption by COP15 of a new action plan on gender helps us to accelerate and move further in this. I'm delighted to invite Amelia Arriguin, who will be speaking on behalf of the CBD Women's Caucus. Amelia, the floor is yours.
Distinguished all, thank you so much for having us here. As we celebrate Biodiversity Day by planting a tree, that gave us the opportunity to think as Women's Caucus on the full meaning of this action. Women and girls, apart from planting trees, we all plant and nurture ideas and dreams for a better future. We plant and nurture trust in cooperation and solidarity. And we will continue planting until we see the fruits. Our unique perspectives and knowledge have played the most important role in building humankind's relationship with biodiversity. To put us back on track, to make peace with nature, human rights, individual and collectives, in the context of biodiversity, shall be recognized, promoted, and fulfilled. Whether in urban or rural areas, in the vast savanna or deep into the tropical forest of the world, women and girls are present and part of the plan already. They do so with such a brave spirit, despite facing compounding burdens due to the persistent gender inequality, discrimination, and violence in the midst of the environmental crisis. These dynamics have consolidated in a vicious cycle, as violations of women's rights can lead to more loss of biodiversity, and conversely, the degradation of biodiversity can lead to further violations of women's rights. But women and girls do not have to be brave alone. They don't have to do and break this cycle alone. We all are responsible to break that cycle. It is imperative to address gender inequality and human rights violations in a comprehensive manner by recognizing, promoting, and fulfilling women's rights and human rights while implementing all COP decisions in order to achieve both gender justice and biodiversity conservation. We call on all of you this day, on all of us, to ensure that the seed of gender justice that we planted back in COP15 keeps growing strong every day, so that by 2030, we are able to see the fruits of our actions taken today, so that by 2030, we are effectively living in harmony with nature. Thank you.
The work we are all doing is about not just intergenerational equity, but it's about forging an intergenerational partnership that will allow us all together to develop a future of life in harmony with nature. To that end, I'm very excited to have a representative of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, Mr. Heitor de Lasta, to speak to us. Heitor, the floor is yours.
Thank you all for having us here. It's a privilege to share this space with you all. And it's an even great privilege to share this space with Amelia and Joji as representatives of women and indigenous peoples and local communities with whom we share our hopes, challenges, and achievements, and who we revere for their centrality as representatives from the guardians of biodiversity. Biodiversity loss is widespread across the planet. The negative impact of its crisis are felt disproportionately between different countries, society, and social groups, with the strongest impact on the most vulnerable countries and groups, such as children, youth, women, Afro-descendant people, indigenous peoples, and local communities. The Global Biodiversity Framework set very ambitious targets for 2030. They require action now to be achieved on time. This biodiversity plan can set us on course towards a world that's living in harmony with nature, but only if it is implemented fully, implemented by all, and leaves no one behind. On this International Biodiversity Day, young people urge us all to make this ambitious biodiversity plan a reality. We, as young people, dare to take alternatives to the biodiversity loss instead of following the same development model based on unlimited economic growth and the exploitations of our territories and life. Dear all, we as youth are already part of the biodiversity plan. We are already organized at local, regional, and global level. Young people around the world is their socio-ecological diversity are living from, living in, living with, and living as nature. Our values of justice, equity, care, and stewardship I brought to these negotiation tables in the hoping of guiding decision-making process. Our policy demands include intergenerational equity and human rights-based approach. And our day-to-day is spent carrying out countless restoration, conservation, education, and public awareness projects, among others. But we can do even more, and we need support to develop, scale up, and unlock the necessary countings to guarantee the effective participation of young people who are on the front line and on the ground. Meaningful participation means being provided with the necessary resources, both financial and non-financial, and tools to exercise the basic human right to participate in the decisions process that directly impact us. In this sense, for 12 years, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network has been recognized and supported by the Convention on Biological Diversity as the official youth constituency. We thank you, the Executive Secretariat, represented here by David Cooper, for the partnership over these last few years. Would also like to express our gratitude for COP15 co-presidencies for their support and recognition of Gibbon in the engagement of young people. Additionally, for Her Excellency Pedro Leon Cortés Ruiz, Gibbon is already prepared and already on the move to continue supporting youth meaningful participation at COP16. Inspired by the COP16 slogan, Peace with Nature, we affirm that peace only can occur when indigenous peoples, local communities, women, and youth are central part of the plan, as well as when human rights, gender equity, intergenerational equality, and the protection of environmental defenders are at the center of the biodiversity policies and actions. We express our gratitude for this opportunity. Nos vemos em Cali, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Dasta. So I will just take a moment here. The Executive Director, Inger Anderson, has another appointment, so we thank her so much for her participation and bid her until the next time. Thank you so much. We're all here for SBI, and you've all been in the midst of it, and now we invite the chair of SBI, Dr. Chira Achalendo Reddy, to share with his insights for today's celebrations.
Thank you, David. Learned speakers and panelists on stage and distinguished delegates. I really feel fortunate to be here by virtue of being SBI chair and participating in such a very memorable and very historic day. And this is the place where the text of the convention was adopted 32 years back. Friends, you have heard all the speakers. There is not much from my side to share, but I would like to share some random thoughts on the occasion of this international celebration of International Day for Biodiversity. We are the subsidiary body on implementation, is the right body to see whether convention is being implemented and so how best we can support its implementation. So we are the right people at the right time, at the right occasion to celebrate this International Day for Biodiversity today at Nairobi. There's a saying that learning by doing and seeing is believing. Great credit should be given to Kenyan people. Here itself in Nairobi National Park, I have seen, I could not make out whether National Park is within the city or city is within the National Park. So that itself reflects the people's commitment to conservation of diversity of life, especially wildlife. I congratulate on this day for setting an example to the government of Kenya and Kenyan people for taking so much care about the biodiversity. Friends, I also should recall one saying from our father of nation, Gandhiji. There is enough in this world to meet man's need, but not man's greed. This applies well, and this has been captured in one of the targets of consumption and patents and production. Our Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework has captured it. Coming to other aspect, that we always say mainstreaming of biodiversity into various sectors. What I feel is that mainstreaming of all of us individually into biodiversity also is required. Then only the whole thing will get integrated and we can achieve the results that are expected to be achieved under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. There is also a saying from our Father of Nation, be the change you want. First, we should change and we should set an example for the biodiversity conservation and sustainable use. We all know that sustainable development goals are also simultaneously being pursued by every government. Many of the sustainable development goals are related to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. They are organically linked. So therefore, friends, I would like to let us make a pledge to work together for conserving biodiversity to achieve the future we want for us and for our coming generations. Let us work together for the benefit of both people and the planet, with empathy for all forms of life. Nature protects if she is protected. Nature cannot be taken for granted. Let us join hands to rededicate ourselves to protect the nature for the present as well as posterity. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for reminding us of that slogan of the previous COP we held in Hyderabad, nature protects if she's protected. And so, le mot de la fin, the final closing words, are given to David Cooper, the acting executive secretary of the convention, who's been with this process for some time. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, it's a real honor to mark International Day for Biodiversity with you all here in Nairobi, the environmental capital of the world. And as has been mentioned, especially for those that have followed the extraordinary journey of the Convention on Biological Diversity, from an idea to a treaty to the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, today is special in another way. It's 32 years ago to the day that the final text of the convention was adopted here in Nairobi. So this really feels like a homecoming, and I'm grateful to the government of Kenya for their hospitality in hosting this ceremony today. I also wish to express my solidarity with our Kenyan partners following the devastating floods that hit many parts of the country. But Kenya is not alone in having to face the vagaries of a changing world, a changing climate. Recently, extreme weather events and related disasters have inflicted suffering in many other parts of our planet. Science tells us that climate change is increasing the frequency and intensity of these events. But it also tells us that biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation are undermining the ability of natural systems to prevent and cushion the worst impacts of these shocks. Nature is the best bulwark human societies can hope to have against these events. Therefore, halting and reversing biodiversity loss constitutes an essential part of the urgently needed response to the intertwined environmental crises affecting this planet. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is the world's master plan to keep nature healthy by halting and reversing biodiversity loss by 2030. We've branded this framework as the Biodiversity Plan to facilitate its uptake by the public at large. With its 23 action-oriented targets and 4 overarching goals, the Biodiversity Plan embraces virtually all aspects of humanity's relationship with nature. If implemented, let me say when implemented, because it must be implemented, the Biodiversity Plan will put the world on a path to living in harmony with nature. And the expanding constellation of bright spots in biodiversity, conservation, and sustainable use around the world tells us this can be done. When we take action, when governments put in place policies, they work. And what we know is that if given a chance, nature will bounce back and provide for us, care for us, and protect us. We are part of nature. By undermining it, we inflict suffering and despair on millions of people around the world. So it is time we recognized that the predominant production and consumption models are putting us on a collision course with nature. We must make peace with nature. Peace with nature is the theme of COP16 in Cali, Colombia, which is just around the corner. We have much to look forward to at COP16, the People's COP, La COP de la Gente. The momentous challenge awaiting all of us now is implementation of the Biodiversity Plan, the plan that COP15 delivered in that historic accomplishment of multilateralism. And of course, speaking of implementation, our ceremony today is taking place during the 4th meeting of SBI. And I think we all expect this important meeting to deliver progress on finalizing the review mechanism, enabling finance and technical and scientific cooperation, and other aspects to enable and to ensure that the world is on track to achieve those 23 targets by 2030. We look forward also to more submissions of updated and aligned national biodiversity strategies and action plans ahead of COP16. And this week, I welcome the news that Uganda has submitted their targets aligned with the plan, the first African country to do so. Government-led action is essential, but for the plan to work, we need a whole-of-society approach that includes everyone. And so, hence the theme for this year's edition of International Biodiversity Day, be part of the plan. Everyone has a role to play. Through their everyday decisions, citizens can abate the pressure exerted on biodiversity. Through their engagement in the political process, through their votes, citizens can prompt politicians to make the biodiversity plan a priority. The private sector can take responsibility to align their business and investment decisions with human well-being and nature's health. Civil society and youth can continue playing their important role in holding policymakers to account and enhancing communication, education, and public awareness. While working together in pursuit of the biodiversity plan, we must empower youth and women and respect the rights of the rights and traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities. And we're very happy to have our partners from these communities, from the Women's Caucus, from the youth with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the plan. It's a very solid plan for biodiversity. Let us ensure that it is implemented. I know that you are all already part of the plan. Thank you, and happy International Day for Biodiversity.
Thank you very much, David, for reminding us of where we're going. Thank you to all of you for your attention, and also I thank you in advance for the efforts you will make to be part of the plan in the years to come. And now with that, simply I'll say thank you, and let's enjoy and celebrate our work and celebrate biodiversity by breaking bread together and thinking about nature. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to all of you. Let's share bread together. Thanks very much.